So this is Checkered Red, and it's Long Train Running, which was one of their covers. So I'm splitting it up into the same categories as I have with all of the other projects, really. The only difference in this one is as an extra vocalist and a keyboard player compared to all the other projects. Anyway, so I've got really simple setup, just a mid cut and low cut at 90 on the kick in, and then a bit of LA76, 1176. Now and that is really a bit with the 4 ratio. So that's not very much processing, and then this, I was so happy. I remember being really happy with the kick out sound as it was, and that was all I did. Just kind of giving it, in fact I even gave it frequencies that you normally take away from a kick drum. So yeah, I was really happy with that, and then no processing at the sum level either. So and there's snare top and snare bottom, fairly standard setup for the snares. It's kind of how I like to hear them. This frequency was a bit off, and then I just took away a bit of 900. Compression with the DBX standard, and then Pultec trick, followed by a little bit of a top end boost. Really, this was probably the best drum recording of the entire project. So you can see there aren't that many alterations that I'm making so far. And then again, DBX 160 on the bottom as well, and the 1073 just eking out a little bit more top end, which was nice. So rack tom, floor tom, panned hard left and right each. Literally just a Supercharger GT with some extra brightness, mild saturation and compression. Cut these out, and this one has a noise gate on as well. I'm assuming that's just doubling up on the fact I've cut it out and just trying to get the release right. Yeah. And so again, very happy with these. Just take it to hit. The overheads still fairly tight in. A little bit more processing on these, but I suppose the standard amount is 5 for the overheads for me personally. Ducking out a tiny bit of mid and cutting at 100. LA2A doing what you'd expect. DBX 160 again. That's not a standard inclusion for the overheads as far as the rest of my mixes are concerned, but I'm happy with the way it sounded. And it's not a particularly intense compression. It's just making sure that it was just reducing a little bit. This API I haven't used before, but I'm boosting top end here for the overheads, making it a bit brighter. That's the only function really. I just thought I'd test it out and see how it sounded, and the result wasn't too bad, so I didn't swap it to anything else. And finally the Supercharger, which is a lot more compression and a lot more brightness. So that's being kind of like slammed at the end. There you go. Room sound. So we're taking away top end and bottom end, sneaking out a resonant frequency or two, and found it a bit low mid intense, so took that out as well. Supercharger GT doing a fair amount of compression there, and a lot of fatness. I don't usually use the fat setting on this bad boy, but it's made it in there. I think I just wanted to kind of contour where this was and kind of bring it like down a little bit, make the whole recording fatter. And then finally DBX 160 with some quite intense compression in this circumstance. So that's really smashing the room mic to pieces. So the bass tone, I had a little bit of an issue with this, to be honest. I was putting a little bit of drive on the Sounds amp, just a tiny bit, and it turned out that actually it wasn't really what I wanted. It wasn't the right kind of drive I wanted, so I had to be careful with that in future in terms of the bass TI that I choose. But having said that, I managed to fix it. Putting it through an amp really does most of the work for you. Get Motown setting again, so kind of with the 15-inch flip top as well, so it's really and the condenser mic, so it's really aiming for that low end and the kind of vintagey style bass tone. Then 1176, just to flatten it out a little bit of an interesting presence boost there. I quite like 1.2 kilohertz on bass, and it fitted this song in particular. The DBX160, more flattening out, 6 ratio this time. It must be quite a lot flattening out on average. So you got the 5.4 makeup in, and then just compressing it against the kick, just so you get both of them where you want them. Then the Nord, I actually did very little on this. I mean, literally just a compressor, but the sound's already engineered, so it's a fairly easy one, to be honest. It even had its own reverb on it, which I didn't like, but in all honesty, but you had to deal with it. And then the guitar, which is something I did back at my house rather than in the actual recording session. So this, I just stuck. So I really tracked with plugins on. I just stuck the EQ on. Kind of, really, this is all very high up the neck and choppy, so that's what I wanted. I wanted to take away from the low mid element. I didn't really want that in there. I wanted more scratchy, funky sound. Supercharger, you can see that with the bright there, and with some compression. I'm not going for saturation this time though, because I want the guitar like squeaky clean. And then finally an LA2A, in case I might have strangled the transients out of it slightly too much, just trying to give it back some of that. So then the vocals. So I've just panned. Actually, I should mention first that the Nord and the guitar pans left and right, kind of similar to how it would be in a gig. To be honest, that's really what I was going for with this. Is I wanted a natural sound. And then so Indy and Bella each pan 10 left and 10 right, which seemed to work well enough and separate the voices slightly, give them slightly different associations. So Bella's first, and what we've got with her, just a standard low cut, then a vocal rider before the compression, and then just a 73 that's boosting high ends and a little bit of mid range. Probably just needed thickening up a little bit. And I should mention drive with the input stage pulled right down, so it's as little drive as humanly possible, and that seemed to work for just like giving their voices more character, I suppose. Indy's is roughly the same, although her voice is slightly lower in general, so the peak, the mid range I wanted to emphasise changed. It didn't sound great at 700 with Indy, better at 350. And then I'll start from the beginning actually. And there's a low cut vocal rider exactly the same as it was, and the LA2A before that, before the 1073. So that's really that. Then with the buses, the vocals verb was RC48. That's absolutely standard with the 1.5 second range. Decided that I wanted the shape up on this one. Just sounded better really. That's one of those knobs that I just play around with until it sounds good. And enough pre-delay to make sure that the beginning of words comes through. And the delay, kind of going for the more lo-fi feel with the slower speed, and the 811 formula. So that seems to sound kind of slightly more, I don't know. I quite like that sound. It's kind of a crunchy delay, especially with the saturation up as well. So there's that. Worth noting that with these delays, that Indy is getting much more of the reverb, and Bella's getting much less, and Indy's getting much less of the delay, and Bella's getting much more of the delay. I just thought I'd kind of separate the voices a bit. It suited each of the voices better individually. To be honest, if I wasn't trying to get this mix done quickly, I should have created different vocal reverbs and delays for each of them. But I was happy with the way it sounded as it was, so I didn't go the extra mile where I had other things to do. Snare reverb, R-verb, again, I was really happy with how this sounded. Went back to the slightly less spacious mix, so I went back to the shorter reverb for the snare, after Lisa Lowe's long reverb. And then again, same deal, pretty much all the time with this room sound. I found I liked that. seemed to work with the rooms that were already there on the mics in college. So, and then DBX 160 for power comp. Haven't actually boosted any top end out of this. It seems to have worked fine as it was. And then your sub bus, which is doing exactly what you expect, and just flattening out there with the compressor. Finally, with the music, I had a little bit of trouble with this actually, because the music bus, what I would usually go for with that is compressing once, but when I'm compressing for both voices and then they sing a harmony, what happened was then the compression would go up by 2 dB on both of them, and they'd be sidechaining way too much for the music, and you start to hear it pumping. So I had to reduce it a lot less. I was considering making a very compressed bus and that had no output that I could then send into a compressor. But I think this actually worked. It worked just as well, and the vocals still sat okay. And finally, the stereo out, doing the making the bass end in mono, and only really a little bit of bass end in there, to be honest. But it's that seemed to work well. I've got the tape emulation on the master again, with some slight saturation. Just brings it to life a little bit, because the mix was, well, the drums were recorded so well that it was quite clean, to be honest. LA2A, standard, just kind of making everything pop, and so, and then the Pro C again, Fab Filter, quite clean compressor, although this is on Opto again, so it's 2 layers of Opto with the LA2A in this, and that was just a very gentle compression. And then the gain and limiter, 11 dB into the limiter. With this one, the mix was intense enough I could try to aim between 2 and 4 without worrying about it too much. And there you go. That's the mix for the first Checkered Red song I'll show you. So